Hi guys, I'm Saintvicious, and I'm going to be going over the patch 4.5 patch notes. So we're going to start with Rengar, since they did just rework him. Uh, they did some like weird changes to him, and I think Rengar's been one of the champions that has been looked at at the most. He's been changed over and over and over again. So we'll see if this change actually sticks to them. Like stealth champions that are assassins are very problematic, and when you give a stealth champion a way to heal themselves, I think that's just like the main reason why that Rengar is such a hard champion to balance. Because you have an assassin champion that can one-shot you, and on top of that, he has tank stats and he can heal himself. So let's look at the changes on him. So the Frosty effect scaling is now based on the champion level rather than the ability level, and they increased Rengar's base health per level by 5. So that's just going to make him a little bit tankier in the late game, not really anything that's going to matter. And it's going to make it even more important that he just like gets a bunch of levels and then split pushes out and powers up that way. Unseen Predator, now you get unstealth at the beginning of the leap rather than mid leap, which is really big because now it actually gives you a way to defend yourself when Rengar jumps on you. You'll actually be able to see him jumping at you so you can react rather than just instantly dying the moment he jumps on you. Savagery fixed a bug where the bonus damage from Savagery could crit. Yeah, people were going like Ghost Blade on Rengar and like instantly killing people. It was really weird. I even saw some people go IE and Trinity and things like that. So that's just to nerf that build. And then the cooldown is now 4 seconds. If you remember, they raised the cooldown on it before so that you couldn't double or triple stack it. But they tweaked the abilities, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. They lowered the base damage by 50 at max rank, and then they increased the AD ratio by 0.2. So this just makes it to where, before, like, you go tank Rengar and you could still one-shot people with the Q combo. So I think that's just to make it to where you have to build AD. You have to like make the choice for that. And then they removed the attack speed buff on the base ability as well. And the basic attack buff window is now 3 seconds instead of 2. So I think you can double or triple. You can probably double stack the Q still pretty easily. But it's not going to be like as effective because they removed the attack speed bonus. Let's see, and then the empowered version, it got increased on the damage, but it got lower. Yeah, the base damage got increased, but the attack damage ratio got nerfed. So I think that's going to be pretty much similar damage depending on the point of the game you're in. And then the attack speed buff is now all on the empowered savagery. So now you get 50 to 101% attack speed based on champion level. So you can still be a really nice split pusher and still take out towers really well with Rengar, but you're going to have to use your empowered strike on it. Rather, like, because a lot of times before, Rengar would be using his empowered abilities on his W or like maybe his Bolo in team fights or not in team fights, but I guess in skirmishes. And with this change, it's going to make you have to decide more if you want that attack speed or not. Because if you don't use your empowered savagery, you're not going to have that attack speed. So you're just going to lose a scrap. So I think that's going to be pretty big. Because before what happened is you'd use your empowered on your W and you get the heal, and you'd still keep the attack speed. So you just win the scrap out based on tank stats and healing. Let's see, Battle Roar. They set the cooldown for it to 12 seconds at all ranks, which is going to be a buff to his early game, I want to say. It's not. I don't really think that change is going to affect him too much. Just slightly stronger early game, and the damage is unchanged. It remained the same. And then they moved around the armor magic resist a little bit. I guess they gave it almost a Zinzal treatment, where they lowered the base armor magic resist on it, but they increased the value you get by 50% per an enemy hit. So if you jump into a big team fight clusterfuck and you get off a good W, you'll be a god for 4 seconds. But in the 1v1 scrap, it's going to be a little bit less effective. The Empowered Battle Roar, they tweaked the healing on it. The lower values on the heal are lower and the maximum heal values are higher. So, yeah, I think that's based on maximum heal 75 times 25 per level. Yeah, okay, I guess, yeah, they just have a higher base. Um, hmm. That's not going to really do much, I don't think. I didn't really thought the healing was the problem on the ability. I thought the armor and magic resist was the problem. Like, the healing is going to be, oh boy, like, you get healed a little bit more. It's going to be nice, but I don't think it's going to, like, push him over the limit. Maybe a tank Rengar with maxing W could be really good with this, but I think you're going to have to build a little bit more damage on Rengar now since the Q tweaks. All right, they have Bolo Strike. Now it's a skill shot. So I guess they gave this one the Cogman treatment. So now it has 1,000 range. They increased the range on Bolo Strike, but you are gonna have to like throw it through a bunch of minions. So I think you have a little bit more safety if you're fighting in the minion line when you fight against Rengar, rather than before he would just like jump out of the brushes and just like shit on you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now if you fight inside the minion line, he's not gonna be able to get his Bolo off on you, and he's not gonna be able to slow you. So this is more of a chasing tool, it looks like. They increased the movement speed slow on it as well. And then the damage on it also got raised by a little bit at later levels. So um, that's gonna be a weird change. I guess you can farm from range a lot easier, uh, but I think his scrapping potential went down because of this. They have empowered below strike, where they increase the damage on it, and then they also increase the root duration to 1.75, which is actually a really long root duration. So I think Rengar would be a little bit better at catching people now. But you got to remember, you're still throwing like a 1,000 range, almost Elise cocoon at somebody. I have to see the travel speed of it. If it's a similar speed, then it should be pretty easy to hit. But if it's slow, then this could be a really problematic ability. Thrill the Hunt. The cooldown on it got lowered at all ranks, but they like tweaked around the ability. Now they want Thrill the Hunt to be used as a tool just to, I guess, get on somebody rather than to run away. So they removed all the movement speed when you're running away, and then on top of that, they also lowered the movement speed by half at max rank, which is I think is pretty big. But after you break stealth, you gain a massive movement speed increase. So once you're on your target, you're gonna stay on them. But getting on the target itself will be a little bit more problematic. And then a big change here as well is that targets are alerted when Rengar is within 1,000 range and stealth, but do not gain vision of him. I think this is going to be a really, really, really huge nerf for high-level competitive play on Rengar and also high elo. But in lower brackets, I think that this ability will be even better, just because like, yeah, this just gives you more time to react. But once he's on you, he's on you. So then they changed Bone Tooth Necklace to be a trinket, so you don't have to have it like taking up an item slot, which I think is really awesome. Because now you can get like the real 6-item Rengar going on here. And then they also changed the trophy bonuses. They moved a lot of those around. Oh yeah, the big change with this is that they made it to where when you die on Rengar, you don't lose the stacks, and then also they removed the attack damage on it. So I think that this will be an item you want to get a little bit. Oh wait, no, it's free. What am I talking about? I was just like looking. I was like, this is gonna be an item you want to get early. It's like, of course you want to get it early. It's absolutely free. So I think it's gonna be pretty nice. Go along with this kit. You're gonna be able to get it every time, every game, and you're gonna be like, nice. I got these stacks, and you can see your champion grow. So it'll be like a little Pokemon. And then yeah, they just tweaked around some of the abilities. They're not as overpowered as they were when you got a bunch of stacks. Like take for instance the 20 trophy bonus is Thrill the Hunt movement speed bonus is doubled to 30% movement speed, which is basically it doubles it. It takes it to what the movement speed was before they nerfed it. So it's just kind of funny. It's like, hey, if you get 20 kills or assists, we'll unnerf your champion. So I think that's kind of funny. And then this is another big rework, the Gragas rework. This one I like don't know how I feel about because I made like that big prediction with Kassadin last patch, and then it just turns out that his base numbers are just too shit for him to be a brawler. And I'm kind of feeling like Gragas might be the same way. Like they increased his health restore, they doubled it, and it's instant now on his passive, which is really nice. It's gonna be really good sustain. But they added a cooldown on it too, so I think overall he's gonna be gaining less health. And then on top of that, they lowered the mana cost in his Q, lowered the range, and then also lowered the base damage and ability power ratio. But to make up for that, they gave it a slow, and also the damage increases by 50% for over two. Like the longer you hold your barrel out on the floor, the more damage it'll do. And the reason they did this is so that you can still effectively farm creep waves with your Q. They didn't want to take that away from Gragas. But and they also wanted to make it to where he has a massive slow utility. So if you just leave the barrel out the full time at max rank, you're gonna have like what a 75% slow. If I did the math right, I'm pretty stupid. But yeah, you have a 75% slow, which is pretty big. But they removed the attack speed slow as well. So overall, I think this is a nerf to the ability. I don't really like this. Hmm. Because what they did is they moved a lot of the power from his Q and they moved it onto his W. So now they want Gragas to be like running into the team fight and then proccing his W because his W now does before like Gragas when he drank his W he would sit there and he would just you don't do anything, which is kind of a clunky mechanic. But now they want Gragas to be chugging his barrel while he runs into the team fight, and then they want it to be used as like almost an auto attack reset that adds a bunch of damage. I don't really like it too much. Uh, yeah, I don't like the changes to W at all. Like the cooldown is much lower, yeah, 6 seconds, which will allow you to proc your passive every time it's up. But I just I don't know. I'm not sold on this ability. Because before Gragas' strong point was he could instantly blow somebody up with his QR combo, and he could just power spike people really hard that way. But now I think it's going to be a lot harder for you to power spike people, and they want like Gragas to be this brawler, I guess, which I don't know. It seems kind of weird to me. I don't know. I'm not a fan of it. And then body slam, they basically gave it a really really high cooldown at higher ranks, and then they increased the ability power ratio because this just goes along with the lines of hey we want Gragas to be a brawler. They lowered the mana cost on E, they increased the base damage on E a little bit at later ranks, but then of course they removed the attack damage ratio on it as well. So it's gonna be kind of weird. I don't know. And then the cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds on unit collision, so that means that even if you hit somebody with your E, it's not going to be. They're just nerfing the E altogether too. What am I? Yeah, cooldown reduced by 50% on unit collision. So before, if you hit somebody with your E, it go down to 6 second cooldown. Now it only goes down to 9, which seems kind of shitty to me. But it does stun, sorta. So I guess it's gonna be like a Q knockup sort of stun from Vi. I don't know, man. His whole kit just seems kind of weird. They want him to be a disruptor, but they want you to be building AP at the same time. I could see this working out, maybe as a top lane Gragas. I'm not sure he's going to be a mid lane pick anymore. Just because, like, you have to brawl people out a little bit more. I think this is overall, just looking at these changes, is going to be a buff to top lane Gragas. Or not a buff, but a playstyle change and viability change to top lane Gragas and a nerf to mid lane Gragas. Because also on top of this, they nerfed the ability power ratio on his R, and they nerfed the base damage on it. So they just gave it the Cassidy treatment. They nerfed all of his numbers across the board on his base values and AP per level, and then they shifted the damage over to these auto attacks abilities like on his W, and then they just like tweaked around his gap close ability and gave it like a weird type of CC. So I think maybe Gragas will become a disruptor. I have seen tank Gragases before in the past, and they have gone off pretty good, but that's because Gragas had really good base stats. Maybe it could work, but that's the only way I could see Gragas working now. So I have to see how he deals with certain matchups before I can say how good he is. He could be okay, or he could be just terrible. But I don't think. I think overall, like the changes of Gragas are a nerf. There's a bunch of bug fixes. This is really big. No longer affects champions who cannot see Fiddle. The Dread passive from Fiddlesticks. You'd be sitting in the brush ready to like jump somebody and like, oh shit, it's the Fiddle passive, and they just gives it away and they run off. And they did like a Glacial Storm change in Nivea. That doesn't really do anything. Graves, they lower the mana cost on his E, and then also raise the lower damage, or the damage values on the lower ranks of his ultimate. Good. Like, Graves didn't have an ultimate before. It was basically a regular ability. I don't think this is going to push Graves over the limit or anything like that. Um, but, yeah, it's a nice change, I guess. It's not going to really do too much for him. And then they have a Heimerdinger. So Heimerdinger has really weird matchups with a lot of melee champions and champions that don't have good ways of clearing his turrets in the early game because you can just set up all your turrets and then push really hard. So they nerfed the early damage values on the turrets, and they also nerfed the beam damage in the early levels. But then they buffed the AP ratio so that it scales just the same in the late game. And then they also increased the beam cooldown. And this is just to make sure you can't put down 3 turrets of Heimerdinger and just like shit on a lane that can't clear out your turrets. And then also they nerfed the Apex turret on Heimer. It's pretty much the same treatment, which I agree with because Jesus Christ, man. Like Heimer would just shit on you with that turret. You'd chase Heimer around and you like hourglass and you put down the turret and the turret would just solo you. It did so much damage. Now it doesn't spawn with a beam charge either, which I think is pretty big. But then they made it to where you get 20% of the beam for each auto attack. So I think even with the 20% gain on that, it's a nerf because what happened before is you put out your Apex turret and it just instantly beam you, and you just get shit on by the turret. So I think this is more of like a long and prolonged fight tool and maybe a sieging tool now with the beam changes. Kha'Zix. So Kha'Zix is like pretty broken, everybody knows. He's pretty damn good. And just like I looked over these changes earlier today, and uh, I'm like almost disappointed by it because I don't think these are the changes that are gonna like pin Kha'Zix down to where he needs to be. So they made it to where now the R has a 1 second cooldown between cast, which is not that big a deal. Like it's whatever. It just makes it harder where harder for him to get away, I guess a little bit, but uh, I still think it's going to be annoying as hell trying to catch a Kha'Zix as Ring because of the movement speed and the damage reduction. Those are the main reasons why that ability is so strong. They should have tweaked the damage reduction on the ultimate, I think. It's just way too strong, and then toned down the movement speed a tiny bit as well. Evolved active camouflage, remove damage reduction. Wait, remove damage reduces turret damage. Hmm. Hmm. Between stealth windows. Wait, did I read this wrong? I read this wrong earlier before. When I read this earlier before, it said remove damage reduction reduces turret damage. So does it just not have the damage reduction on the R at all? Okay, so I'm gonna read this. We love seeing Kazakh players adapt to the evolved action. Unfortunately, the increased duration of Void's assault command extremely short. Straight face tanking abilities and turret aggro rather than swiftly moving in and out of fights. These changes let opponents have a way to respond when the bug is out. So R evolved camouflage, remove damage reduction, and then they have cross out reduces turret damage. Did they just completely remove the R? Like I can't really yeah I don't know. Like I read this ability, it could be read in two different ways. So did they just completely remove the damage reduction, or did they remove the damage reduction to turrets? If they remove the damage reduction to turrets, and they'd be like, whatever, that's a fine change. If they completely remove the damage reduction altogether from Kha'Zix's R, then I don't think it'll be very good. Um, we'll see. I don't know. I suck at interpreting this right here. It's kind of worded a little bit weirdly. Um, Lee Sin. So they had that big Lee Sin rework on the forums a little while ago, and everybody like was like, "Oh my God, you ruined Lee Sin! Like, what are you doing?" So they reverted those, and then they ended up going with these Lee Sin changes, where they want to nerf the W's ability to be an escape tool, and yeah, it's just like because right now when Lee Sin comes into your jungle, and if he has a Sightstone or a bunch of wards, it's impossible to catch him. And also in team fights, he's just like too tricky to catch. Uh, so this is just a nerf overall to that. They wanted just to make it where Lee Sin has just less mobility overall. I think that these changes are going to. Mm, I don't want to say extremely hurt Lee Sin, but it's going to be pretty rough on him. Um, like you're losing a lot of mobility time on this, and then also like the shield thing, where cooldown reduced by 50% if you cast on Lee Sin or an allied champion. So they want Safeguard to be used as a tool to help champions, and also to help yourself. And they don't want it to be used as a tool to like insect people, I guess, or to get away. Because now when you insect somebody in a team fight, you're gonna have 14 seconds before your Safeguard comes back up again. So you're gonna be pretty much boned. Like you're gonna be trading your life for the person you insect. So I think that they want to make Lee Sin commit harder to his plays. Leona, they moved around. Okay, they just pretty much flat out nerfed the ability on Eclipse, which I think is warranted. It just gives way too much armor and magic to this. You're a god when you have it on, and even still, like with the 5 nerf, like that's nothing. She'll still be really great. And then they did it. Base health regen got nerfed by 2. I think these nerfs are like warranted, and Leona will still be a really good champion. And they nerfed Lulu. A weird nerf here is that uh, they did enemy follow duration. They lowered it by 2 seconds, so that means that you can't get off 2 glitter lances with high CDR in a row, which is a really big nerf to mid lane Lulu. And then the minion cast, they made it to where you can't shield minions, which I think is really weird. I liked when I was playing support Lulu and I would shield minions to prevent people from getting CS on them, or to make the tower eat the kill. So I think that it kind of sucks that they removed that point of play from Lulu. And then they also nerfed the base damage on the E as well. So it's like Lulu's a really broken champion right now. Um, they could have nerfed her in other ways. I think that would have been a little bit better. Um, but yeah, it's this is probably what she needed though, to be honest. Like they needed to nerf the E damage, and they also needed to make it to where you can't get two glitter lances off on an E. So pretty good nerfs to Lulu, I guess. But the minion gain shield thing nerf, that kind of like I'm sour about that, just because it hurts support Lulu. So they did like a big misfortune. I don't want to say remake, but they like tweaked her kit and the way it operates. So now double up is going to be like a really big harassing tool. They lowered the mana cost on it all across the board. They lowered the cooldown on it a ton, and then also on top of that, the target that's hit up front is gonna it was at 80 at max strength, and then 0.85 your AD ratio. And the second target is gonna take 160 and 1.0. They just tweaked around the damage values on the Q, and they lowered the cooldown. So I guess they want double up to be used a lot more and to be more of an active harassment tool. So I think that's where they're going with that. I think it's a pretty good change for the ability. Like 3-second cooldown if you on Misfortune for her Q, like you're gonna be getting just railed by double up over and over again in long and prolonged engages. So I think this just makes MS scrapping potential really nice. And it's gonna nerf her poking potential a little bit, I think, but it's gonna buff her scrapping potential because you'll be able to get 2 double ups per scrap, or I mean per skirmish off, or not skirmish, per trade. Yeah, you get 2 double ups per trade off rather than 1 if it's a prolonged trade. Um, Impure shots. So these are the big changes that I really like with the MF. They lowered the mana cost in impure shots, and then they made it to where bonus damage for a stack. There's no bonus damage for a stack anymore, but now it scales off of your AD ratio. So you're gonna get impure shot stacks that are gonna scale off your attack damage, which 0.06 doesn't really sound like that much. Well, when you have MFs that are like getting BT Last Whisper first item, and you're pushing like almost 200 attack damage, that's going to be a pretty good damage gain that you're going to get. And then attack damage speed buff, they increased it by 10% across the board for the most part. So yeah, just her scrapping potential is going to be even better. And then they lowered the duration of Grievous Winds, but who gives a fuck about that? Make it rain, they increased the movement speed debuff to 65%, and they also lowered the cooldown. So that's a really massive slow. 65% AoE, and the AoE on it's pretty big. So I think that's going to be a pretty nice slow. It almost puts it in line with Kog'Maw's Ooze ability, I want to say. So really like that slow change. And then the bullet time, this is the big change here, is passively increases the stat cap of impure shots to 6, 7, and 8. So you can stack impure shots 8 times now at max rank. And that's from autos and from bullet time. Because now bullet time applies impure shot stacks. So what's going to happen in a team fight is MF's going to open with her ultimate, get a whole bunch of impure stack shots off on you, and then she's just going to like rail you for insane auto and double up damage. So I think it'll be a really good counter engage tool. Um, but yeah, and then they also nerfed the bonus attack damage ratio on it, so it doesn't scale. Like the ability doesn't directly scale. You're just gonna have the 1,000 damage base, but you do have the impure shots being applied, so it does technically scale off of attack damage. It just kind of scales in a weird way, I guess. Because what people were doing before is they just stack up like a bunch of AD and then just kill you with the ultimate itself. I think now the scaling is going to come from the cleanup, where you just have the 8 impure stack shots on everybody, because like you're going to be like one-shotting people after the ult comes off. Let's see what else we got. Renekton, they lowered the health and the magic damage on the early ranks of Dominus, and then they buffed the health and damage on the later ranks, which I think is exactly what Renekton needed. Like right now, Renekton just shits on anybody level 6. He's way too strong. And he's just such a lane bully, and then the problem is if you don't get ahead in lane with Renekton with that like early power spike, you go into the late game and you're completely useless. Like you don't do anything. So now what this is gonna do is gonna tone down his lane bullying ability and then just buff his late game, which is exactly what Renekton needed. I would have liked to have seen maybe like some number tweaks on his other abilities, but I think this is good enough for now. And they made it to where Twist of Fate, you just have a longer time to use your card once you pick it. Because it's so funny seeing Twist of Fates pick their card for it in, and then just like the card disappears, and it's like, ha, loser. I think this is a good change to revert the card window nerf. Because now, like, yeah, Twisted Fate is getting seen like nowhere. He has no play. He just doesn't really match up very well against a lot of the mid laners people are playing right now. So he needs a little bit of love. So this is good that they did this. They nerfed Wukong, which I was kind of surprised about. His early shred got nerfed by 20%. Kind of a weird thing to nerf. Um, but it does work on jungle minions, so it was speeding up his clear time. So I think that's why they did this, and it's going to be a pretty big nerf to top lane Wukong as well. Because what would happen is before is you'd max out your E on Wukong, and then you wouldn't get max the Q until a little bit later. So you're not going to have that 30% armor shred in the early levels. So you can actually itemize against Wukong now. If you get that early chain vest, it's going to do a lot more than it did before. Then they also nerfed the attack damage scaling on Wukong's ultimate, which they needed to do because it's a 4.8 AD ratio. That's pretty damn high. And they nerfed it down to 4.4. And then they also lowered, what did they do? They lowered Ziggs' basic attack range by 25. Good. Ziggs is broken. He sieges turrets way too well, and he harasses way too well with his autos. I like that. Bug fix, bug fix, bug fix. Now go look when one finishes firing rather than when she begins firing. That doesn't really matter. He did some AI changes to summon the Voidling. That doesn't really matter. Nami, recommended items have been updated. Okay. Uh, yeah, this is kind of a good thing. Now Aegis of Protection will actually proc off of big minions every time, because before, like, in some of the early levels of the jungle, you wouldn't be getting the Aegis proc on certain minions in the jungle, just because they didn't do enough damage. So this is going to buff his overall health when he's clearing in the early jungle, which will be pretty nice. Um, Talon, Flash no longer breaks Shadow Assault stealth, so now you're going to be able to, oh, and you can actually activate Noxian Diplomacy, no longer breaks Shadow Assault stealth. So you're going to be able to do like a little bit more clutch plays with Talon's ultimate and his E, so that's going to be pretty nice. And also you can do some nice flash plays with it as well. They buffed Scrying Orb, thank God, because it's a useless item. Now it's 2500 range, it's a pretty big range increase, and then the vision duration also got increased. And then, yeah, they just buffed it all across the board. I would like to see this item more. The only time I see it is like when people play Caitlyn, they'll get it and like, ha, far sight, and then ulti you. Spirit of the Elder Lizard changes, they lowered it by 10%, which is definitely warranted. Like, when you get Elder Lizard on Vi or Eve, you, like, instantly kill the jungle. It dies so fast. And then the guy who has the Ancient Golem just left his thumb up his ass because he doesn't have that extra AD from the item. So he's clearing at a slower rate than you. Elder Lizard, yeah, it just cleared the jungle too fast, so I'm glad they nerfed this. And here's the Feral Flare changes. Yes, I know, like in my last patch note rundown, I like complained about Wriggle's Lantern, like, oh, it has no late game. And yes, I knew Feral Flare was going to be coming out, but it wasn't out on that last patch. And now it is out. And just by looking at the numbers on it, I think it does everything that Wriggle's Lantern needed to have done. Yeah, they just made it to where the big thing is the MAME on it. Basic attacks deal 100 damage, which are reduced by 67% against champions, and heal for 10 health on hit. And kills assist large monsters kills increase the damage by 3 and heal by 1. So what is this going to do is going to make Wriggles scale into late game and be an actual item that is going to be valued in slot. So I think you'll be seeing more Wriggles with this. Because before what would happen is the Wriggles just wouldn't stack up to the Ancient Golem, because the Ancient Golem is an item you can have late game and you can use late game, and it's definitely beneficial because it gives health, CDR, tenacity, and Wriggles just didn't give anything that matched anywhere close to that. Now Wriggles is going to have Feral Flare, which is going to be more of an attack damage item. I actually think Nocturne or somebody that just wants to power clear, maybe even a Shyvana, who knows. Some of the power clear junglers might make a comeback with this item. Maybe even an Udyr. Actually, I could see Udyr being good too with this. So I really like this for power clear attack speed junglers. I have to see how the gold generation is on it and how I feel about it in game, because it's kind of weird how it's just 30% flat gold increase from monster kills. But I think it's going to be in line with some of the other jungle items. So I like this change overall to Feral Flare, and I think it's going to be pretty good. Then let's see, the Aether Whisper. So just like their weird little thing where they want there to be better early game items and better build paths. So they made Aether Whisper, which will build into Lichbane and Twin Shadows. Just gives movement speed and ability power. Not the item itself is kind of underwhelming, but what it builds into, Lichbane, Twin Shadows, pretty nice. I like the change they did to the Twin Shadows though. They added CDR on it, which is a very valuable stat on just about everybody, including supports. And then they made it to where if the ghosts fail to find the target, it'll lower the cooldown of the ability because the ghosts will come back. So I think this really goes in line with making it a scouting tool. Because before it was like, ha, I used Twin Shadows to catch you. And that was never how the item was designed. The item was designed to be a scouting tool. So this is going to make it a better scouting tool, and it's going to just make it a better item overall. Because now it has more ability power and a CDR. They removed the magic resist, but who gives a fuck? Like, I want an item to kill people, not to tank people when I get the Twin Shadow. Forbidden Idol. This is basically their new CDR item that's going to be low tier and built into Morellonomicon and Talisman of Ascension. And they nerfed Talisman of Ascension, 200 gold increase for the build path. Actually, I want to say it's a nerf buff, because what happened before is you get your gold generation item, and you'd be sitting there on the gold generation item without much of a increase in stats, while you're saving up money to build the Talisman of Ascension. Like the build path for Talisman of Ascension before, there was a big gap where you didn't have any kind of power gains, where you're sitting there waiting on the gold for Talisman of Ascension. So I like that they made the Forbidden Idol in there to where you'll have a little bit of power while you're waiting on the Talisman of Ascension, because now you'll have the CDR, which is just really nice stat on support while you're waiting for that. I think it's like 1,000 or 1,100 gold to build this, so that's gonna be pretty good. Oh, it'll be 584 gold, 585. So yeah, the build path's just altogether better. Frost Queen's Claim, they made it cost more gold, and they increased the AP rate value on it. Whatever. I think Frost Queen's Claim was the item that got hit the least out of all the support items in this. Then they have Face of the Mountain. Costs more gold. They lower the health regen on it, but they increase the health to 500. So I think Face of the Mountain's the item that got the biggest buff out of, or the biggest, or that gained the most out of these changes. Because now it just gives you a better in-game item, like 500 health on a Liana. That's a lot of effective HP. So I think I like the changes for the Face of the Mountain. I'll take the 200 gold cost increase just to get that extra 125 health, so fine by me. Woda, they buffed the AP on it and then made it cost more gold, but I think champions that benefit from Woda aren't really popular right now, outside of maybe Vlad. So I don't know. I'll have to see on this item, just because like nobody really uses the item right now, just because there's not that many champions that benefit from it. So kind of irrelevant what it changes, to be honest. Aegis the Legion, I really like the change they did with Aegis the Legion, because what happened before is no supports to build Aegis are Locket, because the build path was just complete shit. Like, there's too many items involved in it. And if you just fill up your inventory with all these little shitty items, then you don't have a slot for a pink ward or anything like that, or any type of like consumable. So now you're just probably going to be sitting on the Negatron and the Ruby Crystal, and then not buy the Reju bead till later. So it just makes the items that you're going to be sitting on a little bit better, I think, while you're waiting on the Aegis to be built. And they also remove the armor from it and increase the magic resist by 20%, because it builds out a Negatron now rather than that cloth armor. Locket of Iron Solari, they just like buff the item altogether. They remove the armor on it, gave you that extra magic resist, gave you the extra health. Because it's a magic resist item. It's an item intended to be good against magic damage. So that's good. They took the armor off it and just increased magic resist, increased health. Overall buff the item. I like it. They changed the build path on Warden's Mail. That's whatever. They made Glacial Shroud cost lower money, but now has lower armor and lower mana. Which I like, because the reason you buy Glacial Shroud is to get CDR and maybe a little bit of armor. You're not like buying Glacial Shroud like, nice, I got 45 armor, I'm set. So I like the change to the Glacial Shroud. And then they tweaked Frozen Heart. They made it cost less gold overall, but they increased the armor on it by 5. And they nerfed the attack speed reduction aura. Not sure how I feel about this. As a defensive item, they nerf the attack speed on it, but I think it's going to be better as an offensive item for some of the people who use it, because I guess 20% CDR still. It's still a pretty big CDR gain. The main reason you get Frozen Heart is to get that CDR. It's not really to get the aura. I mean, yeah, the aura is really nice, and I like it, but to be honest, when I'm thinking like what item should I get, and if Frozen Heart comes up, it's because I want that mana and that CDR. So, boot enhancements. They increased 20 base movement speed on Alacrity. I love Alacrity. Thanks. They made Captain cost 600 gold now instead of 750, and it does 10% movement speed. I think Captain's a very undervalued boot enchantment, and I think you might actually see some people getting this a little bit more. Because 10% movement speed increase to all allies that you're around pretty much. Pretty big. Maybe you could see it on Karma or something, like some of these movement speed comps. Could be really nice. Then Distortion increases Ghost movement speed to 40%. Jeez, you're going to be running so fast with Distortion on. Grants 30% movement speed per 1 second after using Flash. Damn, that's going to be pretty beast too. And grants 30% movement speed for 3 seconds after successfully using Teleport. That's going to be beast too. Dude, Distortion changes are so fun. I like that they made fun abilities that you can use with the Distortion boots, and you can actually use that to make some pretty clutch plays, I think. That extra movement speed. So I really like the Distortion changes overall. Like, good on you, Riot. Um, Enchantment. Fur. They lowered the cost to 475. I never really bought Fur. I never really liked it, so get it on AD carry, I guess. Fountain Healing restores portion of missing health and mana per second. So they just tweaked Home Guard because when you're sitting there and you're waiting in base, like the whole point of Home Guard is to defend your base. So, yeah, there's portions where you're stuck in combat and you're sitting there waiting for your Home Guard to proc and you're not really regenning that fast. So, I think that's just to make it to where that doesn't happen as much. And then they just did a whole bunch of armor and glyph changes. I don't really want to go into these too much because these are all kind of like preference-based things. Um, the big change of this is they gave all champions in the game +4 armor, but then they nerfed what armor seal. Yeah, they basically nerfed the 9 stack of the seals. Like it's instead of being 12.69, it's 9 armor. So they just nerfed the armor seals. I think that literally their entire goal with this is they just want it to be where you can actually uh, choose different runes. Like right now, every rune page looks the same. It's like, oh, you got the flat armor, you got the flat MR. Like, good job. They want scaling runes to be more sought after. They want it to scale better in the late game. They want it to be used more. Same thing with the CDR. They this 15% CDR with a full stack of blue glyphs on CDR. Really nice. 50% CDR late game actually goes a long way. Maybe you'll see people getting that on a support or something, or a really good CDR scaling champion. They increase the magic resist on the magic resist per level scaling. So maybe if you are match up where you're laned against an AD opponent, and you know that the rest of their team is like really magic heavy, I think it's going to be even better for magic resist per level. Mana regen, just going to be better for like maybe Sonar or something, or people that are going to get out of lane and want to be like pouring mana out. And then they changed the Quint, same thing. Yeah, they just made CDR overall better, 7.5% CDR reduction. That's pretty big. And then the scaling has 15% on its own. So that means with just runes, you can get 30% CDR. And then you have masteries, 35% CDR from runes and masteries. I think that's actually going to be pretty big on some supports. If you don't want to opt into some of the CDR items. Pretty nice. Greater quintessence of attack speed. Big whoop, 13.5% attack speed. Nobody really used attack speed quints, to be honest, so I still don't think they'll be used. And they nerfed lifesteal quints, which is really big for some of the mid laners that use it, and for some of the all the AD carries. So, yeah, I think that was warranted. Like too much lifesteal in AD carries and too much disdain that they got from just runes. It even was at the point where a lot of AD carries weren't even like buying lifesteal in some cases. They were just like straight up rushing Triforce. So. Are damage items, which I think is good that they nerfed the lifesteal on it. And then to counteract this, they buffed Feast to now give 3 health instead of 2. Big whoop, that's not that much health. And they buffed Scavenger to where the gold gain area is a little bit bigger. Exhaust. So they made Exhaust a better tool to be used against casters, because now they lowered the attack speed, a debuff on it, and then they raised the damage debuff to 50%. So I think this is really going to be huge for bursty casters. And you're going to run up and exhaust them. Because before, the only time people would get exhaust is if they want to stop like a Kha'Zix or a Zed or somebody jumping into somebody, because the range was low and all it really did was lower your attack speed. So now it has more range and it can be used aggressively against people. Like if you see that Orianna about to wind up that big combo or that Annie, exhaust her ass, and then she's gonna do half the damage. It's gonna be pretty. I really like this. It's gonna make it a more thoughtful tool to protect your team, and you can make some nice plays with it. And then heal. Heal got like massively buffed. They not only did they lower the cooldown by a full minute, increase the health on it by over 100, but now they made it targeted, and it removes healing reduction effects. So ignite does nothing to heal now. And then on top of that, affected champions gain 30% movement speed for 2 seconds. So it's going to be a really, really, really great tool for saving people. And I just love what they did with the ability. Heal is actually going to be good now. It's been in the game for so long, and it's never really been that amazing because, yeah, just Ignite overshadowed it. So really glad that they did those changes to heal. I think it's going to be an amazing ability. Ignite now grants vision. Big whoop. They changed the color of barrier. And they tweaked Dragon to where it has less attack damage, but it now scales with its armor and magic resist, and its health also scales. The current health has physical attack damage. Oh, percent current health damage. So yeah, Dragon does damage based on how much health it has. Okay, that's interesting. So I'm sure the damage is going to be somewhere similar. Yeah, it'll probably be about the same damage, just looking at these numbers. But now, Dragon gives a damage debuff of 20% rather than attack speed debuff. So this is going to hurt champions like Elise and Fiddlesticks that are just going to be ignoring that attack speed debuff and just killing it through spells. So Dragon, yeah, just got small tweaks in how it's done. But yep, that's the patch note rundown, guys. I guess I'll do one next week. If you guys like the patch note rundown, don't forget to check out the sponsor, Absolute LowJack. If you want to keep your laptop, like you have a really expensive Alienware laptop or something like that, keep it safe, feel free to check them out. Thanks for watching. I am going to go play Earth mode because it is beast.